The future, I think, will really need not just that, the technical fluency, but it will also need compassion as we figure out how do we engage AI to be our thought leader. I think that's where female executives are really poised to lead in new ways.
Welcome to the She's So Sweet podcast, where we interview accomplished women who have worked their way to the C-suite. I'm your host, Kristi Faltorusso, Chief Customer Officer and award-winning customer success executive. I'm so excited for our guest today. I've got Kathleen Rouse, who's the founder and principal at CultivateCX. Kathleen, hi, how are you?
Hello. Thank you for having me, Kristi. It is a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited. And obviously, I get the sneak peek. So I've already gotten a little behind the scenes. So I know that today is going to be a really good story. So we're super thrilled to have you here.
Well, I have to tell you, as your number one biggest fangirl, I am deeply honored to be on this call. So thank you so much.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun today. But listen, before we get started and diving into all this, we got to lay some foundation for our listeners. So let's tell them who you are, what you do, tell them about your company. Let's start there.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, I am the founder and principal of CultivateCX, which really started because I've had over 20 years of experience maximizing adoption, increasing renewal rates through my tremendous global teams that have driven fantastic value for our customers. I specialize in working with high growth enterprise size companies, typically valued at $1 billion or more, with at least 1,000 B2B customers. And I focus on organizational design and strategy, customer onboarding and adoption, customer marketing and voice of the customer, and portfolio health analysis. And I'm really thrilled to be on this call. And just a shout out to all of my clients who I just am so thrilled to be able to work with folks that I trust and that I have the opportunity to work on some really cool projects with.
I mean, spoken like a true customer leader, somebody who stops to thank their customers in their introduction. I mean, like, you are the epitome of a CS leader. So I love that so much. All right. Well, listen, now that we have some understanding of kind of what you're doing, obviously your career has been big and beautiful and you've done so many fantastic things. And we're going to dive into that. But before we get there, I need us to rewind. I need us to go all the way back, as far back as you can remember. Kathleen, when you think about it, your earliest memory, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up? Or what did you want to be when you grew up?
You're just going to crack up, Kristi. As a kid, my god sister and I, we were convinced we would grow up to be international spies. So we imagined we were jet setting across continents. We were uncovering secrets. We were saving the world. And I do have to say that it turns out I wasn't far off. I am not saving the world, but I am getting to lead across, I've been able to lead teams across 3 continents. I immerse myself in these diverse cultures. I pinch myself every day with the kinds of, folks and experiences I get to have. And today I get to partner with clients and together we kind of uncover these hidden opportunities. I get to co-create these strategies with them. And like I said, it's probably not preventing global disaster, but I'm definitely delivering measurable impact. And I hope that my younger self would be really proud, even though I'm not uncovering, secret maps and all of that stuff.
I mean, listen, I think it's always very funny to me because I get the privilege of like kind of hearing what did everyone want to be? And then like, I know where they ended up. And so for you specifically, because you're in my world of work, I'd actually say that like, it's pretty on par. As far as I'm concerned, you definitely did become an international spy because for the work that we do, like the amount of discovery and intellectual curiosity that we have to have and like the deep care and the projects. I mean, like if you think about it, like I think it's par for par. So I think you are an international spy. So I would check that box.
Oh my God. I love that. My inner child is just beaming right now. So I am super cool. I'm going to tell my daughter that tonight.
Yeah.
And say,
I would
Mommy is an
rebrand.
international spy.
I would rebrand. And like, I think this like calls for an update on your LinkedIn header. I mean, like, I think we're going to go all in on this, like the international spy. I think we've got to find something here.
I love it. Yes. All right. We're going to work on that for sure.
All right. Well, listen, I know that, we think about our careers and there's so much that is kind of packed into them. And I always say it's like impossible for us to tell every story and go through every part of it in 60 minutes, which is typically what we have when we record together. But I want you to reflect back on your career journey. And I want you to think back to some of the most pivotal moments or the biggest decisions you've had to make that you feel like really contributed to like your ascent.
Absolutely. I do have to say my path to being a founder actually started with a very humbling lesson in my late 20s. So I launched a business that did not take off unless you want to count the crash landing. I had to pick myself up. I dusted off my pride and I just had to get back to work, right? I went back into corporate, but I tell you, that failure taught me more than, the MBA that I have could. I was focused on, health and wellness at the time, which was a complete left turn from what I was doing in corporate, which is lesson number one. Really be clear and lean into the skills that really drive the most value. But I tell you, we learn so much from our failures. It taught me how to be scrappy. It taught me how to stay grounded. And it also taught me how to spot the right people to learn from. Out of that really tough challenge, I met some of the most incredible mentors that I still keep in touch with today. That experience opened up many doors to me to identify these mentors and leaders who really have fundamentally shaped the way I show up today. And, I'll continue on, fast forward to 2020. This is when the world turned upside down, right? I was at Certinia, which is at the time we were FinancialForce. Mm-hmm. I was leading a customer engagement team and really focused on the efforts to really drive value. But, we quickly realized there were so many of our customers that were struggling and we couldn't wait for them to reach out. So I started, working with my cross-functional team members to start digging into usage and engagement data, spotting those early signs of customers in trouble even before they reached out. We then proactively stepped in to support them with empathy, coming with strategies to help uncover how they can come out of this challenge, and then coming up with a solution that would help them, weather the storm for the next 3-5 years. That effort did earn me a Gainsight Game Changer Award, but more importantly, it reminded me that even inside these large companies, we all have the power. And I would say the most personal pivot came in 2023. So before that, let me rewind. In 2021, my parents moved in, and I lost my mom, and my dad still lives with us. Thank you. And in 2023, with my dad living with me, and my daughter being, young, I was kind of in that sandwich generation, and so I was balancing the increasing needs of my family, particularly health issues at home, and, trying to balance with the demands of a corporate executive role with, lots of travel, lots of late hours. And I knew I needed a new model. That led one that would make sure that it let me do meaningful work without missing those really important moments at home. And so that's really what sparked the launch of CultivateCX. It's been an incredible journey of aligning my values with my work. It's building something that's allowing me to deliver strategic impact to my clients while still staying close to home. And the adventure is still unfolding.
I love that. So let's pause here for a moment, because I think I don't know what you see on your LinkedIn. And I kind of talk about this on every episode, but for me right now, everyone is kind of becoming a content creator or a solopreneur, and everyone's kind of breaking out into their own. And so I guess this is I'm asking for some advice and some guidance for this audience, because I know there's a lot of folks out there that are struggling to find work, who are considering this as an alternative path, or they're pursuing their passions, and this is just the work that they'd rather be doing. So let me ask you, what are some of the most difficult things you've had to learn along the way with launching your own organization, right? And building your own business? Because, just yesterday I was chatting with somebody and she goes, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about this. I have to get a tax accountant and I have to do this. And it's just, it was like all the business-ish stuff that she just hadn't considered and wasn't thinking about. She was focused on, well, I've got to pick out colors and a logo and build a website. And I'm like, that all seems like second to some of the other things that I would think would be a primary focus, but we don't know what we don't know. And if we've never built a business, we don't know where to start. I mean, although we could go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I'm starting a business. Help me. Where do I go? And ChatGPT will give you a very thorough response, I might add. But what is your advice for these folks? Like, what are some of the learnings that you had coming out of your own experience?
Yeah. Ooh, such a good question. So I do consider myself to be, even though it's going to sound weird, risk averse. And I say that, I say that for a few reasons. Number one, I went through a failure, in my late 20s. And, I would have to say I was much more focused on let's pick the colors, let's do the logo, let's do all of these things, and it'll just come. I would say lesson number one is that, your failures are oftentimes just steps towards your success. And it's going to feel tough, when you're going through that, but learn from those. So I would say number one, embrace every opportunity to learn. Don't look at it as a failure. Look at it as an opportunity to learn. Secondly, now fast forwarding to my current business, I did not really want to leave. I did not want to leave this fulfilling career, but I needed to in order to address the pressing issues in my household.
Yeah.
I'm the primary breadwinner. And so I had to be very pragmatic about things. So I would tell your listeners, start with, I think what has worked well for me is start with an MVP, because you minimal viable product. Get out there and really, and think about what are the skills that I have that's going to deliver the biggest results, add the greatest value, and then, just quickly get something up. I'll tell you, Kristi, when I first started the business, my business name was Kathleen Rouse, LLC. I mean, it was just like, let me just get something up so I can get going. And I spent the majority of my time, probably 90% of the time, just calling people in my network and asking them, what are you struggling with? What are you facing right now? What do you anticipate to face in the future? Tell me about those challenges and tell me what you're struggling with. Where do you find the gaps? Where do you wish that you had support? And, how are you measuring that success? And all of that, it's kind of like when you're thinking about building a product, right? You're kind of in that design mode. So I would say, spend time in that. And I will tell you that, like I said, I wasn't thrilled about leaving. So I actually told my employer that I had to leave 6 months prior to when I actually left full time. And so it was, that was
I gave a big sigh. So for Kathleen saw me take a deep breath. And for those of you who didn't hear me breathe, it's because like when you're navigating a decision like that, like to give yourself so much time to sit with it and actually like be in it, like you've already communicated it. And so like every day is a step closer to that. And that's a long time. Like that must have been difficult for you to even just navigate that part of that journey, going from I'm going to communicate this makes it real, to like, what is unwinding all of my tenure here in this role? What does that look like? Right. And then knowing that there is an end, and when that date comes, like that's real, and now you're on your own.
Yes. Well, I think, to your listeners, if they are in a situation where they're thinking about this, I would say, have faith that people want you to succeed, and I was fortunate enough to have a very trusting, open relationship with my manager and leadership to be able to say, here's what's happening, right? I don't feel good about the situation. I don't want to let you down. So we need to figure this out. And so I think, enlisting my team to help me figure this out and help us figure out how do I leave the business in a positive state, ensure that our customers are minimally impacted, and promoting the right folks to then take over some of these roles was a team sport, right? I know not every one of your listeners has that luxury. But if you do, even if you don't feel like you do, reach out to the people around you and ask them questions, like ask them advice, ask them to be your sounding boards, because you'll be very surprised at how people show up. They want to help. They want to help support you, especially as you're moving through these difficult, these difficult decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. All right. Well, so I think this is actually the perfect way that we segue to the next point here, which is our battle scars, right? The challenges that and the obstacles we've had to face along the way. And so, obviously, again, you've had a very long career, and your career is not over. And so I'm sure you will still face additional challenges in the future. But I would love if you can share with us, what were some of those significant challenges that you had to face, and how did you overcome them?
Yes. So I mentioned earlier, it is still, seared into my brain. When I lost my first business,
Yeah.
oftentimes your biggest growth moments, they come disguised as challenges. And, not only did I lose my first business, I lost my entire life savings with it. And so that, not only did I have to rebuild my career, I had to rebuild my confidence.
Yeah.
And it also taught me to get really laser focused on the skills that deliver results. It taught me, that setback really taught me how to be intentional, resilient, and, why I'm deeply pragmatic these days. So I think to your listeners, the listeners that are thinking about starting their own business, there's the pragmatic piece. How am I going to pay the bills? How will I get to do this with the least amount of effort, knowing that potentially it's just you if you are an independent consultant? Secondly, I would say, I alluded to this earlier in 2020 at FinancialForce during the height of the pandemic. I watched these incredible people navigate fear and uncertainty, not just at work, but at home. And
Yeah.
I knew they needed clarity and confidence. So, we built those frameworks to identify risk early, respond with empathy. And I think the most important thing that I learned there was to enlist other people around me with complementary and diverse skills and perspectives that could help us solve this problem. It helped, it not only helped our customers, but it helped ourselves feel more in control in a, very uncertain time. And I alluded to this before, I'll say it again, and I'm living it now. But, the challenge, even if you're facing a personal challenge at work, like I mentioned in 2023 at Coursera, when I found myself just missing these customer on-sites, team events, I was unable to show up the way I wanted to, both at work and at home. I felt like I was letting everyone down, but being open about it and saying, this is how I want to show up, that helped my team and me design a new way for me to contribute. And I'm still in the midst of it now. These battle scars are continuing to work through it. So right now while we're on the cusp of moving to Paris, it has been a difficult, it's been a lot of challenges and obstacles to overcome, lots of uncertainty, finding the right clients, navigating those, that uncertainty and building the right skills and finding the resources necessary. So, I would say that maybe the through line in all of this is focus on what will deliver the top results, and then surround yourself with people that you know are going to be your cheerleaders and will help you to rise to that challenge.
I love that. All right, let's talk about something here though. If it's okay, I want to sit with something that you kind of mentioned in your kind of storyline here, is that you have a child and you have an aging sick parent at home. We don't spend enough time talking about that. What it like this generational, like we find ourselves at a certain age where we are caring for our children and we're caring for our parents. And I actually hear from a lot, especially women, who are navigating this time of their life where their children are of a certain age. And so maybe they're middle school, high school, maybe even early college, but they're still having to mom to these children, because I also admit I'll probably be momming my child well past college. But then we also have parents that we're now the caretakers of. And so what has it been like for you navigating that? Because it's like you're showing up for everyone else around you, and like, how are you able to show up for yourself? I mean, not even just professionally, but personally as well.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Ooh, that's a big question. Yes, I know. I actually just had to make sure I had scheduled my annual physical the other day because I was making sure everybody else was taken care of. I would say that one thing that I really try to strive to do, and I do this every morning and every night. I spend time meditating and journaling. And I do a lot of work around gratitude. I get to take care of my dad. I get to be part of my daughter's life. I get to do this amazing work. I get to pay the mortgage, all these things. Right. And I think, look, every day is not, I'm not like, yay, this is great, every single day. But I think finding time to find those moments of joy and finding those moments of laughter, I mean, even I'll share with you when my mom was passing, my daughter was only 4 at the time. I think she was 4, 3 or 4. So it's so funny to see death through a little child's eyes, because she was very fact-based about it. She was like, Lola died. Lola is, grandma in Tagalog. And she's like, Lola died. And then everybody's like, oh my goodness, but it was just, she just made me laugh, because she would also say that, we'd be whispering in the room, and she's like, why are we whispering? She's dead. So
I love the innocence of children. They're not tainted by anything yet. Like, they're so pure and it's so innocent and so kind.
So exactly. And so I say that to say, find those moments of joy. And then on the other side, so thankfully, my dad is in much better health. And yes, I'm so glad.
To hear that.
Yes. And so it's wonderful. And it's interesting, right? Because you balance these different roles: professional, mom, daughter, wife, all of the things, right? And so, balancing that with, my dad lives with us. He lives in an in-law suite in our house. And so making sure we find the right balance of the roles that we're playing. I cannot mother him. He would not let me mother him. And I also want to ensure that he's healthy, and, but he certainly contributes, especially as like free childcare.
Yeah, I love that.
Exactly. So I go back, let's see. So you asked, how do I find the balance? I just try to find the laughter in it all. And I want to look back on my life and just be like, oh my God, that was hilarious. I want to be on my deathbed and just like laughing at the things my daughter said, laughing at the memories with my parent, my dad. We go karaokeing, on the weekends.
Oh,
That's our thing. Yes. So, those are the things that I want to focus on. And they help to lighten, the times when I got to take to doctor's appointments and fit in the meetings and take a call from the waiting room and, do all the things. But I think it's a life well lived.
I love that. Now, listen, there's only one follow-up question to this, and you may be anticipating it, but I can't think of another question that would be best suited to follow that. What is your karaoke song?
So good. So good. So my go-to, I am going to tell my age, but it is Fire by the Pointer Sisters.
Ooh, good one.
Yes, girl. Yes, girl. I mean, It gets everyone going. It gets everyone going. Now, my dad, he has many, many songs. He's kind of got this Frank Sinatra voice.
Ooh.
And so, yes, he loves anything Frank Sinatra. My Way,
that's classic. Love that. Okay, I had to ask. I am not much of a karaoke girl just because I'm kinder to others. And I would never make anyone listen to me sing on purpose. But I do love going out to do karaoke with my friends and watching them sing. But I have to tell you, if I was going to do a karaoke song, I would definitely pick a crowd favorite, like the type of song that everyone knows the words to, so everyone sings along. Like the type of song where they can't stop themselves from singing, like that type of song. Because
Brilliant.
I would need the group to drown me out. Because I could be a performer. Like I could be on stage, I could be dancing, I can captivate an audience, but like I just can't sing to save my life. So I need it to be like group participation. So I feel like a Sweet Caroline or like something like that, or like New York, or just like something that's going to get everybody else where they know the words, it's fine, and everyone's going to jump in and sing along.
Brilliant.
Right?
Brilliant strategy.
Right?
Absolutely.
I'm very solutions oriented. And if I found myself in that kind of a pickle, that would be my out. Like just find a good song that everyone knows the words to. Or like most people, I guess generationally, I'd have to crowdsource and kind of like scan once or twice to make sure I don't miss the mark by picking the wrong song. Like my daughter's generation, it would definitely have to be like oh gosh, we'd probably have to do like Chapel Roan or something like that. Because you had to find a song there. I'd probably go Hot to Go because fan favorite. So
exactly. Yes. I hear that consistently every week.
All right. Well, listen, this is something that I love doing this with all of our guests because I feel like as women, we're so ambitious and we're always planning our next big milestone, right? We're so focused on our goals that we stop to reflect. And I will tell you, I even had this conversation with my daughter this week. We were going to get like sodas at Sonic because that's our treat, is like soda with like all the flavors and stuff.
Yes.
So we're in the car. My daughter had just won the, RIT Women in STEM Scholarship Award. Oh, she was gifted this award on Tuesday. And so that night we're out, we're going to go for a drive, and she and I are talking in the car, and I was like, you looking back at this year, I mean, like this kid is brilliant, and I take no credit for this, but like she's an all AP, all honors. She is like top of her class. She's in every club. She plays 2 varsity sports. I mean, like she's very active in her community. Amazing. She volunteers. Like she's doing all of the things. And not because me and dad make her do anything. Like she is so self-motivated and driven. And so I said to her in the car, I was like, are you proud of yourself? And she goes, yeah. But like she was so hesitant because she always strives to make us proud. Right. And so like, I know she's always seeking validation, which I don't think is abnormal as a child, but like, she didn't stop to reflect, like, if she was proud of herself. And then she goes, oh yeah, and that English test I took the other day, I got 100 on it, by the way. And I'm like, Adriana, like, you need to find time to like celebrate your successes. And she just kind of looked at me and she goes, I don't have time. Like, she goes, by the time I'm done with one thing, I have to study and prepare for the next things. I don't have time to celebrate. And I said, you know what? Then like, let's carve out some time on Saturdays, like 10 minutes. And like, let's just make a list of all of the things that you accomplished that week. And I said, and let's just take 10 minutes, just write them down. And I said, let's just take that few minutes to reflect and acknowledge that like all of your hard work, because I said, if we're just focused on like what college we get into, or like I said, you need smaller milestones. And I said, and you need to feel the momentum behind all of your hard work, because I'm like, you're sacrificing nights, weekends, time with your friends, because you're in tutoring, you're in SAT prep classes, you're studying. Like, I mean, she puts in the work. I've never seen a kid work so hard in school ever. I definitely did not. And so I'm just like, you need to celebrate the success. And so all that to be said, to lead me up very long-windedly to the question I want to ask you, which is, when you think back to your career, what are your proudest moments? What are your biggest successes? When you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I did that. I achieved that. You know, I'm so curious to hear what you reflect on as your biggest moments.
Well, first I have to say, I am stealing that idea on Saturdays. Like that
It can't
Saturday
be a weekday,
celebration,
right? It has to be on a weekend, and it can't be Sunday because Sunday we're panicking for Monday. And so Monday through Friday, we're like 2 in it. Friday night, it's like she is decompressing from like just, oh my gosh, the week she just had. So I figured Saturday mid-morning, like before lunch, but like after we've gotten through the morning. So like I'm thinking like 11 a.m. Write down your things. Anything you did this week that you feel like is worth acknowledging.
Brilliant. Yes. Okay. I am taking that, filing that in my back of my brain. But you're right. We don't often pause to celebrate the moments that really mattered. But I'll tell you, there's a few that come to mind. And when I look back at my career, the first one is actually when I was an individual contributor. It was in 2013. I was working at Manhattan Associates, and I helped to launch Yammer, which is an enterprise social collaboration tool. And we created this grassroots movement. We actually named the team of champions the Lone Nuts, which is if your audience, if you look up the TED Talk, just look up Lone Nuts TED Talk, and it talks about how movements often start with a single person willing to lead. And, that initiative really sparked global collaboration and it encouraged teams across the company to co-create and co-create ideas that directly improved the customer experience. It just really showed me how powerful it is when people feel empowered to contribute. So, that's one that I am particularly proud of. And in 2019, while I was at FinancialForce, now Certinia, I watched with immense pride as my entire team qualified for President's Club. I mean, that was tremendous. We achieved over 95% renewal. And what I was most proud of, it wasn't about the number, it was the way that we showed up to get there. So I had technical CSMs and I had strategic and scaled CSMs all working together, aligned with really thinking about the customer first in our approach. And, I have to go back. I would be remiss if I didn't say, in 2020, in the heart of the pandemic, by partnering with these brilliant colleagues across data science, product, customer success, building this COVID-19 dashboard in Gainsight that helped our CSMs to, quickly detect those risks early and reach out to these struggling customers with empathy and action. That, and being able to highlight that team as we won that award as a team was very important to me. And I'm still very proud at how, we were able to rally around this shared purpose in a very uncertain time.
I love that. Okay. So obviously like you've done a lot here, but now in your current role, like this is your company. We've talked a lot about like, what you did when you were influencing other teams and these cool movements, but like, what's the coolest thing you've done recently?
Oh gosh. Oh my goodness. There's so many cool things. I sometimes I just pinch myself at the kinds of projects that I've been able to work on, from standing up the voice of the customer and the customer advisory board strategy for Coursera to designing the onboarding methodology and strategy for Meta to, working with Changing Social on their customer engagement strategy and org design to even, defining the renewal strategy and other projects with SalesLoft. Like that is, just that alone is really cool. But I would say the coolest thing I feel like I've done is towards the end of last year and through the beginning of this year, I've launched what are called the Cultivator Awards. And these are where I get to highlight my customers. And of course, we talk about, what are the results of the project, but I also like to put a spotlight on them as people. So kind of similar to what you're doing here, we dive a little bit into, what did you want to do as a kid? And, I heard the same things. I heard, I'm sorry, not the same things. I heard, people saying they wanted to be astronauts to, they wanted to be a teacher, and to where they are today. And so, getting to put a spotlight on these folks in kind of a different way. We oftentimes, as we're creating content or we're thinking about, highlighting the strategy of our business, we can get lost in like the story of the value. But the way that I've gone about, my go-to market strategy and why I call the business CultivateCX is because it's about cultivating these relationships and cultivating this long story. My hope is that these are not just, 6-month projects, right? Like that's just to get in the door. This is then to cultivate a much longer, relationship and success story that we can look back on and say like, dang, that was pretty cool. Like we did good. I'm really proud of us. So I'd say that, regardless of starting the business and, bringing in the money and all of that stuff, that's wonderful. Obviously we need that, but, highlighting the customers has been tremendous. And I'd say also, the story is not over. I announced to my customers that I wanted to move to Paris, and I saw an opportunity in Europe to, bring my expertise and customer experience and AI and machine learning. And, there was so much support.
I love that.
That's a really beautiful aspect of the business.
Well, speaking of support, you know that my favorite saying is empowered women empower women. And so, one of the things that I've loved about hosting this podcast is hearing all of the wonderful ways like the guests here are elevating females in their communities, in their organizations, in their industries. So what are some ways that you are empowering other women?
Absolutely. I love that phrase, by the way, empowered women, absolutely empower women. And, it can be as little as giving a shout out on LinkedIn, reposting a post from a fellow, female, in my network, to co-creating articles. I worked with, the chief AI officer and the CEO of a local data science company, as well as the CEO of another organization here, both women. And we co-created a series of blog posts about onboarding and adoption of emerging technologies. And it was just so fun to get to build something together. To even, now I have the good fortune of being able to make investments in, fellow female founders' businesses, connecting them with my network. Sometimes just making an introduction to people can open up doors to, PR agencies that they needed, or, a great accountant or what have you, right? So I love finding all those ways to spotlight and support women, being bold, doing meaningful work. And, even looking back on my career as I've led teams, one of my proudest legacies is, helping women grow, not just within customer success, but finding cross-functional opportunities where they've moved into product, ops, leadership roles. That's something that I'm most proud of. And I always would take the time in my one-to-ones to say, if we fast forward a year from now, what would you be most proud to look back on? And, it just opened the door to a deeper career conversation and, helped them to build this roadmap toward their own version of success. So, these days I continue to work through CultivateCX, by elevating these incredible women that I get to collaborate with, these cultivator stories. And it's not just about celebrating those spotlight moments. It's just being there, being a phone call away. I'm grateful to have so many men and women, but women who want to understand, how do I launch my own business?
Yeah.
Tell me that, and I think even just telling them they're not alone. One of the biggest things about being a solopreneur is that you're not prepared for how lonely it can be. And, sometimes I get many women that call me that just say, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Like, I want to be part of a team.
Oh.
And I say, hey, you're not alone. But I can always be your cheerleader, whatever path you decide to choose, whatever you touch, it will turn to gold. But you can always call me, because I remember what it was like.
Oh man, that is kind of sad when I think about it. Lonely. Well, this is why networks are so important, right? And having your board of directors and having your people in your community. And this is why immersing yourself and building that early is important, because then you can leverage that if this is a path that you decide to embark on. All right. Well, listen, as you talked about helping others with their career, I want to know what's next for you, right? You're thinking about your future too, right? And so as you think about the future and your goals, what are some of the things that you're most excited about in the future?
Oh gosh. Next up in my journey is my family and I are relocating to France, to Paris. I'm incredibly proud to have built a business that allows for this kind of flexibility and global perspective. Professionally, I'm excited to bring my expertise, to the European market.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I'm just thrilled to show my daughter that there are no borders when it comes to building a life you love. Looking ahead, I actually see a very exciting shift in tech leadership. As AI reshapes how we work, mm-hmm. there's just growing demands that I see for women, what women leaders naturally bring to the table, clear communication, deep collaboration, empathetic decision-making, bringing that kind of, making a space for women in the global market is really important to me. And, the future, I think, will really need not just that, the technical fluency, but it will also need compassion as we figure out how do we engage AI to be our thought leader. And I think I think that's where female executives are really poised to lead in new ways. And so I'm excited. I always say the time horizon is very different when you are working for yourself. I used to have these 3-year plans. Now it's 6 months to a year. And so,
I mean, did you ever achieve anything on your 3 or 5 year plan? Like when you set these big, I just need to know, is it me? Like I've set plans. I've had thoughts of 3 years, 5 years. I don't think I've ever made it past a 6-month goal. So
right?
Even those big plans, because everything changes, especially in technology, right? So for us, it's your company gets acquired, something happens, there's a big shift, you launch a new product, your company closes down, you get a promotion. I could never predict the future.
I know. I wish we all could. But I do say, and my dad used to tell me this all the time. He said, shoot for the moon, because even if you land amongst the stars, you've still accomplished great things.
Well, I love that.
Yes.
All right. Well, listen, before we wrap up today, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away with them?
If I look back on my experience, especially right now, I would say don't wait for permission. Lean into what makes you uniquely different, and don't be afraid to break the mold. The career and life you dream of are absolutely within your reach. To those that are listening in the audience, every bold step you take, it creates space for others to rise to. And, they all want to be in your corner. They want to see you succeed. And, that can potentially lead to an opportunity for you to help lift them up in the future. And, that belief is what has led me to launch CultivateCX. And it's what fuels me every day as I work with leaders to build businesses that not only, have high performing results, but are deeply human in the way that we connect with each other. So I would just say, to your audience, be audacious, be intentional, and just remember the path you're creating today. Trust me, it will light the way for the next generation of leaders. And especially for you parents out there, this specifically includes the ones who are watching you most closely.
Oh my gosh. What a wonderful way for us to wrap up this episode, Kathleen. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your journey. It's been remarkable to watch, and obviously it doesn't end here. So I'm excited to see part 2 of this in France and see how this continues and to continue to follow your story and our friendship. So I'm just so grateful for your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristi. It's been such an honor and a blessing to be on the interview today.
Oh, wonderful. We're thrilled to have you. And for those of you who are still with us, if you've enjoyed our episode, please rate and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, connect with us both on LinkedIn. And until next time, we'll see you soon.
Hi guys, I want to share a bit about an organization that I support called Wednesday Women. They're on a mission to increase the visibility of executive women leaders that you should know, learn from, and be inspired by. On LinkedIn, they share the profile of 2 amazing women each week, on Wednesdays of course. And now just imagine if we all followed, amplified, and nominated the women that we want to see more of. Their initiative provides examples of women CEOs, founders, sales executives, technical leaders, and so many more. By supporting Wednesday Women, you'll see more of these professionals in your social feeds, of course, but also on stages, podcasts, and panels. If you're interested in learning more and supporting their initiative, head over to www.wednesdaywomen.org or follow them on LinkedIn.